Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I want to talk about Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. Now, if you've been watching the news, then you already know that they were found deceased in their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico on Wednesday. Now, as we go through this video, if I sound a little bit more familiar than just watching a few news stories and doing some research, it's because I knew Gene Hackman. So him and I did not hang out on the weekends. We were not, good friends like that. But I knew Gene Hackman for years. Now, it had been years since I spoke to him, but I am very familiar with him and his wife. I'm also very familiar with this house. I know this property. I've been there numerous times. So as I was hearing the story on the news about what had happened, I could kind of replay everything in my head as to where it was inside the house. So I have a little bit of inside knowledge about what may have happened. So I want to start out by talking about Gene and his wife, Betsy. Gene was a very, very famous actor. He was 95 years old. He had been around for a very, very long time. And he was in a lot of hit movies in the 90s, some amazing blockbuster movies. And his wife, Betsy, was a classical pianist. So Gene was also a writer and a painter. He was a very good artist. They were both very extremely talented. Something else that was really important to Gene and his wife, Betsy, were their dogs. They had a love for dogs. So that's going to kind of come into the story here in just a little bit. Let's start out by talking about the information that's already been reported. I have some inside information, and we'll be talking about that throughout this video. But let's begin with the details that have already been released. I want to start out by describing the area where Gene and Betsy lived and where they were found. They lived in the Hyde Park area of Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is a very exclusive area just north of the city of Santa Fe. It's on a mountain and it's wooded. There's a lot of brush. So it's very private. It's very secluded. And that's the reason that celebrities and millionaires build in this area. It's next to a small private airport, and the views from this area are incredible. From Gene Hackman's back patio, you could see all the way to the Colorado mountains. So these are high dollar properties. And Gene Hackman and Betsy have lived there since the mid-90s. So they've been there for a very long time. They have a very big property. They lived on 12 acres, and their main house, I want to say, was over 10,000 square feet. Their guest house was approximately 2,500 square feet. So this was basically a compound. It's a very, very big property, and it's not the type of property that someone might just stumble upon. It's not a neighborhood where you have houses right next to one another. It's very secluded, and that's why a lot of celebrities and millionaires build their homes here. On Wednesday, the exterminator who was going to be servicing Gene and Betsy's home went to their house and thought it was odd that they didn't see anybody. Nobody came to the door, and there was already some maintenance workers who had been working around this house that thought it was strange that nobody was home. I mean, Gene was 95 years old, so he spent a lot of time at home. So he began looking through the windows, and he looked through a window and he could see Betsy laying on the bathroom floor. So he immediately called 911. Now, when he called 911, he let them know that the house was locked up, so he couldn't get inside. He was seeing this from outside the window, and all he could see was Betsy laying on the bathroom floor. Now, she was on the floor of a guest bathroom that was right by the front door. So he called 911, and Santa Fe Sheriff's Department showed up on scene. Now, he would have had to go down to the bottom of the hill and basically take them up to the house. There's a really long drive that leads from the main road to Gene Hackman and Betsy's house. There's also a gatehouse at the bottom of that area. So, like I said, this isn't the type of house that someone is just going to stumble upon. If somebody's at this house, they probably either know Gene and Betsy or they know this house. So, when law enforcement got there, they say that the front door was partially opened. Now, when this exterminator called 911, he said that the house was locked down, and that's why he was looking through the window. But reports say that the front door was partially opened. Now, when law enforcement gained entry and went into the home, they found Gene Hackman deceased in the mudroom of his house. They also found his wife, Betsy Arakawa, deceased on the bathroom floor of the guest bathroom. And they also found one of their dogs deceased in a closet that was also in the same bathroom where Betsy was found. So it seemed odd, that everybody who was alive, including the dog, inside this house was deceased. So they thought the same thing that I thought when I heard this information, and that was that there had to be a gas leak, maybe carbon monoxide. So they called New Mexico Gas out, and New Mexico Gas determined that there was no gas leak and no risk of carbon monoxide. So that's when things got kind of odd because, how did all three of them become deceased simultaneously? When Gene Hackman's body was found, investigators said that it looked like he had taken a hard fall. And as I said, he was found in the mudroom of the house. Now, when Betsy was found on the bathroom floor, law enforcement also stated that it looked like she had taken a hard fall. Now, there was a lot of prescription medication kind of scattered around the guest bathroom, kind of scattered around Betsy. And then they found their dog inside the closet of this bathroom. Now, law enforcement determined that there was no sign of struggle or no sign of violence. It looked like they had all just passed away. So initially, investigators came out and said that they didn't believe that there was any sign of foul play. But of course, those of us who are following this story were like, how did, two individuals and one dog all die simultaneously by natural causes? I mean, that just didn't make sense. Gene was 95 years old, but Betsy was only 64 years old. So how did both Gene and Betsy pass away and the dog all at the same time? Now, when they found these bodies, they said that decomposition had already set in, and they also said that there was mummification. So they had been deceased for an extended period of time, and now we know that they believe that they were deceased for approximately somewhere around 9 days. So they had been inside the house for approximately 9 days. Now, that was another thing. There were two other dogs that were outside in the backyard, and they were fine. So everybody in the house was deceased, and the two dogs outside were fine. A lot of time had gone by. So it makes you wonder, why didn't anybody check on them for 9 days? I mean, almost 2 weeks. It seems like someone would have checked on them. This was a big house. They had maintenance workers, and they had people around this house that hadn't seen this couple for almost 2 weeks. So it seems strange that nobody had checked on them in that long. It also didn't make sense, the gas leak and the carbon monoxide, because they would have been in there for almost 2 weeks. And when law enforcement entered the house, it seems as though they would have either smelled gas or realized that there was this type of problem. But now we know that there was no gas leak and there was no sign of carbon monoxide. Something else that seemed odd was that nothing was out of place. Nothing seemed to be missing. So it didn't appear to be a robbery attempt gone bad or anything like that. It just appeared as though they had all passed away. Now, something else I was thinking about was it doesn't appear that they had any security cameras. They're basically relying on digital evidence from Betsy's phone, but it doesn't appear that there were any security cameras around this area. So that kind of adds to the mystery because they can't go back and look and see what happened. I want to talk a little bit about what I think may have happened. And this is just a theory. This is something that I think is a possibility. Now, is there a possibility that there was foul play? Absolutely. But there's no signs of foul play, no signs of forced entry, no signs of struggle, no signs of violence, no markings on Gene or Betsy that would indicate that there was something physical that happened inside this house. So I think, and this is just my opinion, I think that Gene Hackman passed away in the mudroom. And I think that it's a good possibility that Betsy found him and out of, anxiety and haste, she began taking some medication. Maybe it was, from what I've heard, it was anti-anxiety medication, antidepressant medication, something like that. So I think that after she found Gene deceased, maybe she went into this guest bathroom and took some medication. And maybe in her haste, she took too much. And it's a possibility that she might have OD'd. But what about the dog? How did the dog end up in the closet? Because the first thing that I thought was maybe the dog ate some of this medication because they said that it was scattered all around her. So I was thinking that it's a possibility that maybe the dog ate some of the medication. But that wouldn't explain why the dog was in the closet. And this was a German Shepherd. So this wasn't a small dog. I think that it's possible that Betsy may have OD'd. And I also think not intentionally. I think it's very possible that Betsy may have been taking this medication. She, was having a lot of anxiety. Obviously, she just found her husband deceased. And I think that that's how she met her fate in that guest bathroom. I think that the dog was closed up in that closet in the guest bathroom for 9 days. So it's very possible that that's how the dog lost his life. He had no water. He had no food for 9 days. So I think it's very possible that it was a chain reaction, one thing after another. And when law enforcement got there, it was just a very strange situation. Because, that would be odd for 3 lives to be lost simultaneously due to natural causes. That would seem really odd. So now law enforcement has come out and said that they are ruling these deaths as suspicious, and they're continuing this investigation. So as more information comes out about Gene and Betsy and their dog, I'll come on here and update y'all on what I'm hearing and what I'm learning about, because the details are strange. So I'm going to stay on top of this case because there's a lot of information that's still coming out, and there's a lot of details that are still being investigated. At this point, it doesn't sound like there was any foul play. It doesn't sound as though someone went into this home thinking that they were going to steal, Gene and Betsy's belongings or anything like that. If there was foul play, it sounds like it would obviously be someone who went in that home for the sole purpose of taking Gene and Betsy's life. But from the details that we know now, it doesn't appear that that's the case. It appears more as this may have been a series of accidents, and that's what led to this conclusion. But I'm going to stay on top of this because this is a story that I'm very interested in. It's a story that I have a connection to. So I'm going to stay on top of this story. And of course, I'm going to keep you all updated as I learn new information. Now, Monday, we are going to be talking about the Idaho 4. We have a lot of information to talk about when it comes to the Idaho 4 case. A lot of documents have come out. There's a lot of information from the suppression hearings. So on Monday, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about all of this information. And on Monday night, I will be doing a live stream with A.R. Hayes from A Convict's Thoughts. It'll be at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. It'll be streamed on his channel, A Convict's Thoughts, and we'll be chopping it up about the Idaho 4 case, as well as talking about Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa. So keep an eye out for that. It's always an interesting time, always great conversation with a great community. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I really do appreciate it. And if you liked my video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. I hope that you all had an amazing day. We'll see you next time.